Thanks.
Figuring out all those things. Thanks, Richard, for joining me. I appreciate it. Let me expand the questions. So do you want to introduce yourself? I know you pretty well, but can you introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Richard Ma. I am one of the full-time librarians, and my service point areas are both the Oceanside campus, but mainly at the Community Learning Center. In fact, I was actually hired to be the outreach and coordinating librarian for the Community Learning Center, and that was actually done with a petition drive by faculty and administrators there, as well as some of the students. And that was probably 17 or 18 years ago, many, many moons ago, so I can't remember.
I didn't know that. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
And along with my CLC duties, I'm also responsible for mainly at the Oceanside campus and a little bit at the CLC, our exhibits program. So we do put on every 8 weeks a digital exhibit focusing on some type of heritage month. We try to aim for some of the main heritage months that are out there, like the one that's going on right now is Latinx. And so our particular exhibit right now is on the farm workers movement. And then the next one that I'm working on is the Trail of Tears. And then the third component of my job deals with media acquisitions. So faculty members who want specific films or DVDs or streaming media for their classes, I'm the one responsible for trying to locate that, find a good price structure for us, and then acquire that for classroom use. Of course, we do that also for the library in terms of our collections development in that context. And then the fourth part of my job that I really love is basically working at the reference desk and working with students. So especially the CLC, where our students there tend to be very, I guess, grateful, for lack of a better word, when they receive services. I mean, they come in there for a little item and you help them and they walk away as if you parted the Red Sea for them, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, those are the four components of my job as a librarian at Miracosta.
I love that. Thank you. You're so right too. They're like, they didn't, like I said to you a little bit ago, that people don't know what they don't know. And then the second you give them a little bit more, it's like, it blows their mind and they're so
right.
So I'm interviewing you as part of this little series I'm thinking about in terms of the support that we don't know we have as faculty members. And I thought of you for so many reasons, but I'm intentionally beginning with you because I think that the nature of your job is to find answers. The nature of your job is to seek out information. And I think we as faculty are generally good at helping students connect with information. I don't know how good we are at connecting ourselves with information or each other. And so I thought I would start with a high-end person who has these skills already and just kind of pick your brain about your own network and how you do this for yourself and kind of suggestions you might have for other teachers too. So my first question is about you and your own community. So how do you intentionally tend, if you will, your faculty community, whether it's day-to-day or ongoing, and what do you actually do that builds those relationships?
That's a great question. So it's funny that you chose me for this. And when you did, I'm thinking to myself, boy, I'm going to be a very boring interview. And part of that is by nature, I'm an introvert.
Right.
So I'm not one who goes out there and tries to seek relationships and be the life of the party. I'd rather be in the background. I'd rather do the background work, and I'd rather do the work silently, but in smaller groups. And so because of that nature, I tend to not reach out to larger populations. I tend to establish one-on-one intimate relationships along the way. And I think before you even did the recording here, we were just talking about how we work together in that kind of context. So a lot of what I do, I start with my department because I feel that my department is my strongest asset. There's multiple librarians on there who have knowledge bases in areas that I do not. Like Lauren, who's our web services librarian. So anything that comes technology, web related, I go to her first. Or Gloria Ann, who's been there in terms of our historical knowledge, as well as the foundation of our collections development, and she served as chair multiple times. So that's sort of like a mentor that I reach out to. And of course, with people like Jennifer Paris, who's our electronic resources librarian, anytime we deal with databases or things of that caliber, I go to her for that kind of background knowledge too. So I start from that particular vantage point first, and I basically move out from there. So joining different committees on campus, which I would recommend for newer faculty too, that hey, when you're in these these committees as well as communities, matter of fact, because each has its own unique flavor.
Right.
You sort of like work with people and you develop things with it, and you do side subcommittees and this and kind of that kind of stuff. That works well in terms of building relationships and expanding your horizon. Right. Now, for each of our positions, and I mentioned things that I do like the exhibits, the exhibits also requires me to reach out to certain entities on campus. So one time, I had this massive idea on building the Japanese internment exhibit into this, full-fledged thing. So I reached out to our design department, with Paul Clark and David Parker over there and Chris McName, fantastic people to work with. And again, it's always that smaller group for me because that's my comfort zone, right? And what really worked well there is, when you're working with these individuals and you're talking to them and you're saying, hey, this is sort of the vision, but we want students to be involved. They start taking over ownership of some of that stuff and they do that kind of thing. So it works really well. Right. And then, as you get more and more comfortable and you expand that network a little, you start doing things like for me at the CLC. I consider you a great resource. I consider, Angela a great resource. I consider a lot of the, not a lot, all of the non-credit ESL faculty a great resource for, hey, you know what, I'd like to come to your class or invite me, or if not, what resources are you working on that I can go and find out whether we have that or not, and we can acquire that for your use. That particular instance where, oh, there's this one film, it just came out on Netflix. Okay, let me do the research on that, right? And they say, oh, it's not available yet, but we wait a few more months, it's going to be available, that kind of stuff. So you build that sort of like service.
Slowly but surely.
Right, exactly. Exactly in that context. And then I think the last part, and I will give credit to Mary Gross for her leadership at FA. But I've been in FA for quite some time, and I believe that faculty rights are important. And I think when you're in these committees, especially for people like me who don't like to speak out as much, or who don't like to be, hey, all the arrows are pointing at you, no thanks. Right. It's cool that they establish the environment where diverse perspectives are valued, and even the quiet perspectives are valued. And so I think that too is where, hey, this is the kind of community I want to be a part of. This is the community where I belong. And as you go into that particular setting, now you're looking at like 20 something people. You're not looking at like a 2 or 3 combo anymore, right? But even in that type of atmosphere, again, I guess the environment, the flavor of things that are set up in there allows you to be yourself. So that's how I expand. And and the last thing I do want to recognize too is that I also build a lot of relationships with our staff, our staff at MiraCosta, our library staff, our learning center staff, staff in other areas. So I think expanding that network too, and valuing them as individuals and not just as service-oriented people, even though I'm one of those, right? They have a function that helps the college succeed. And so I value what they do. People that come to mind, like Amy Powell with the Learning Center, right? Right. Tremendous job, lots of responsibilities, lots of stress. But I always find time to joke around with her. We have our kids in common and that kind of stuff. So, yeah.
You said just so many great things. So I'm going to touch on 2 or 3 of them.
Sure.
One, I love, and you've mentioned this to me before of like, oh, I'm an introvert, which is not something I think of when I think of you, because you're very gregarious when, talking, but I see your point in that you're building these very individual relationships, but then over time, you've built so many of them, right? You've got a very expansive network. And I consider you part of my network as well for those reasons. We've had very individual conversations, and I'm thinking back to this fun thing when I first started at the CLC, and you were really based there and integral there. And Angela was like, you should just go talk to Richard about everything. I was like, okay, I'm going to go talk to Richard about everything. And I don't know if you remember coming to class and doing our MLA triage sessions, but it was like we would we'd have students in a lab and they're working on this thing, and that's a perfect example of like, it's very specific, and I got to know you through that, and we're working together in a close space. And we've worked in the reading festival and so on. And so it doesn't take an alpha, it doesn't take a super extrovert to build a network. It takes those relationships, and I think the willingness to participate in ongoing communication and be there as a resource. But I love that you're pointing out it's not like I'm in these big spaces saying me, because on our campus, at our college, we have a lot of those personalities.
Yes.
I'm sure people point to me and go, I'm one of those personalities, but we have a lot of those, right? And we have some wonderful leaders and we have some very loud leaders, but we have a lot of quiet leadership and support. And then the second thing I want to point to is the support staff. As you're talking about that, like, we're all part of this body, right? Like, we've got the tendons and the muscles and the bones, and it's like we absolutely have to rely on each other. And so as you're pointing out that, no, part of your support team is also those humans. Yes. And we need to remember that it's not just about the faculty. It's about every single person that touches another life at the college. So
Yes.
I really appreciate that.
Well, and one of the other things too, and I always allude back to this too, is that our students are also our support network. And basically, it's incredible to me. I know that when I teach my library 101, and in this particular session I'm teaching, I have one student who says, yeah, I'm taking this class because my girlfriend took it and she recommended. Then I have two other students who basically said, I'm taking this class because my sister took it and she recommended. So, and even at the CLC, when I go there, it's busy for me because students are always coming because they know you're there. So like, I'm pretty sure, students take your class because, oh, it's Erica, I've had her before, right, and I want to take her again. And then, if they can pick you forever, they will. Yeah. They have to perpetually move past the stage, right?
Correct.
So there's that comfort zone for students too.
Yes.
So, I mean, that's another support network for me.
And it's really nice when we can see them move beyond and they recognize we're still here as support. So one thing that I love about, like, you're on the credit and the non-credit side, it's so nice to be able to be like, yeah, but go take Richard's class on the credit side, right. You know him, and like that warm handoff, because you're right, they'll stay forever and we love them, but our job is for them to not need us anymore. Like, we've done our job. They can be like, okay, now I know that and I can keep going. So. Yeah. All right, so my next question, which kind of segues nice into this, is when you realize you need to learn something for your teaching or leadership, I'll just say your job in general, how do you decide what to look for and where to find it? And do you have any examples?
Yeah, this is a great example. And I'll use one right now that deals with our district's health insurance plans.
Oh, okay.
And this is quite recent, as a matter of
fact.
And I normally don't make rash decisions. I tend to be very pensive about my decision making. But I was speaking to Glorianne, one of my colleagues, who has the PPO plan.
Yeah.
And I've always been a Kaiser member, but lately Kaiser has not given me the kind of healthcare I care for, especially going through some of the things that I'm going through right now. So I was just speaking to her on last Friday, and in terms of that conversation, I was asking all these pointed things about the PPO plan, because I've never used that PPO plan before. I've always, again, been on Kaiser for the last 17 years. So there's like the co-pays and the deductibles and the out-of-pocket expenses, and as well as the prescription co-pays, and all these other things that deal with like self-referrals and having this and that and all that kind of stuff, all these parameters, right?
Yeah.
And it's funny because I'm on the benefits committee for our faculty association. But usually when I'm on there, I don't look at the nitty gritty of stuff. I look at the general parameters and, hey, how do we get the best benefits that we can get for our, for basically all of MiraCosta. And during that conversation, Lauren came in, and she's also a PPO member. So I started picking her brain and everything. And after that, I basically went to HR and changed my election, even though I had already picked Kaiser for our open enrollment period. And I literally had 10 minutes to do that, which is something I do not do on a normal basis. I mean, I usually hash it out, but I had thought about it for quite some time before that, But after doing that, I wanted more research. So a lot of this, as a librarian, I did a lot of research on my own just to satisfy my own edification on, hey, how this is. So I combed through that whole CIS website, and it was quite useless. And part of the reason why I do this particular research for myself is because once I understand that, then when I get to the FA and people start asking questions about the Kaiser plan or the PPO plan, I can be a resource to answer some of these questions for them. But I was not satisfied with what I was able to comb through at that website, because again, there are certain things that are just so poorly put together, and that's one of them. So I went back this past week and I interviewed a few other people, people who have the PPO plan. And since I had done 2 faculty PPO plan members, I went and started talking to our classified staff just to see their perspective, because, maybe insurance are different. I also, did the interview with different age groups. And so that to me was important, because, if you're an older member, maybe your health needs are different. If you're a younger member, your health needs are different. Yeah. And then I also, interviewed somebody who had some serious health issues. And so, that particular individual was going through a lot this last year in terms of healthcare. So, it opened up my eyes as to, okay, this is how it is. And I would say that all these people I interviewed were very willing to open up their dashboard for their scripts choices and show me, okay, this is how the billing works, and this is what they have here, and this is how you press, and this is how you can do this. And so by looking at that, I was able to look at how that compared with the Kaiser. And so I walked away from this experience learning tremendously from my colleagues, which goes back to your first question, right? How do you expand your network so that you can pick up what you don't know that you don't know, right? So I mean, it was really eye-opening. And I think it also alludes back to your first question. When you establish this network, there's also a level of trust, right?
Yes,
I mean, when I talk to you, I know a lot more about you through your Facebook post because I hear about your your children's accomplishments and what they have done, and the superpower women's empowerment that you have for your daughter and that kind of stuff. I mean, you learn that, right? Because that's an area of networking, literally social networking, of course, right?
Right.
But it's funny because then, people are willing to share their personal stuff. I mean, they're opening up their own portals to their own healthcare and sharing that with me.
Right.
And I feel honored because,
you don't have to do that.
Right. You don't have to do that. And I didn't even ask for that. Right. I was just trying to look at the logistical pieces of, okay, if I go with this particular plan, and other people go with this particular plan, and if I talk to other people about this particular plan, how can I help them make informed choices?
Yeah.
And I think as a librarian, that's my thing, is that, don't give faulty information, give accurate information, or give information that you've seen anecdotally and say, hey, I saw this anecdotally. Right. I mean, there's a pervasive misinformation that goes out there. I mean, it's always in the political, realm. But I know as a librarian and as a responsible information literate person, I try to give information where I know I've experienced it firsthand, I've seen it firsthand, and I let people know this is firsthand information. Right. And so that's how that came about. And I think that was the most recent example.
That's a perfect example. And to your point, like, there's that trust level, but they're also recognizing, like, oh, they want to be a resource. They want to help. They know that you're trying to help someone else. And you're almost feeding off of each other, right? Yes. Of like, let's all do this together and figure out what's the best. And I don't know, as educators too, and I don't even want to just say as educators, because again, we've got everyone at the college has this sort of central idea of we're here to help. We are here to help. So that's a perfect example. Thank you for sharing that. And that's such a librarian thing too. You were just I love it. Like, I'm going to read the whole website and then I'm going to do this and this and that. And it's like, yes, you should do all those things. And for all of the humans out there who don't, Richard helps because he did all the things. I was in the AI lab earlier this week, and Rick White's going over all of these nuances of the very latest ChatGPT. Jim Sullivan and I are laughing at, like, thank God he's devoted his life to this thing so we don't have to.
That is so true.
He can tell us this thing in like 10 minutes and we don't have to spend 10 hours learning. But that's kind of what you just did with the healthcare thing. And it's like, now you're a resource and you're sitting on FA in a space that is going to inform all of these other people. So that's awesome. That's a wonderful example. This one kind of relates. So I'm wondering about resources that feed both knowledge but also belonging. So which resources, spaces, or routines do you return to because they give you both solid information and a sense of connection?
That's a great question. And I don't think I have any particular one. And I
Yep.
think it really depends on the situation and the information or what I'm looking for. Sometimes when I just need to vent, I guess for lack of a better word, right? Because our jobs can be frustrating sometimes. Sometimes when you deal with situations or issues or whatever that you have no control over, and that you're trying your best, and people still turn it around and basically point the finger at you. And it's like, it can be draining sometimes. And so
Yeah.
sometimes you need that little vent space. And when I do have, when I need that, I go to certain individuals who are very close to me and I vent. And because we do that back and forth, they come to me to vent too.
Yeah.
So again, you have that open space and that open trust for them. But luckily that doesn't happen that often. So
Right.
there's a lot of other things where, like, resources that you mentioned. Let's say if there's a particular like that health example that I showed you, that healthcare example I showed you. There were people that I know who are on that particular plan, so I went to them. But let's say if I'm going to, let's say I'm working on an exhibit, and I need help with this particular exhibit because our digital exhibits take multiple steps and a multiple of work hours just to get that up and running. So I'll tap our associate librarians for some of that kind of stuff and talk to them and work with them. And I mentioned earlier our kudos to our staff, kudos to our faculty, but even more kudos to our associate faculty librarians as well as our associate faculty, who basically do a bulk of the work that our department needs for them to do, right?
Yeah.
So, I'll reach out to that particular population. Or like, FA is another group that I would go to depending on the needs. Sometimes people come to me with questions because they feel comfortable asking me and they know that I wouldn't reveal, their identity or what their situation is. And I may not have the answer. So I'll go to FA and ask, hey, so-and-so is asking about healthcare and retirement. Or so-and-so is asking about retirement incentives, and they don't want to seem greedy to go out there and ask that, but it's legit. Other places offer that. It's an incentive for most places, right? I'm like, I'll raise my hand and say, what, is there something that's on board there, and then take that information and come back and provide it to them. And then there's a small group of us. It used to be small, but there's a larger group of us on campus who love to talk about like financial planning and financial retirement planning. So, that group, I'll go to them when something comes up, or like, this whole new thing called the BBB, the Big Beautiful Bill, right?
Oh, yep.
By the Trump administration, right? So, so there's elements in there that changes financial planning components. So we're on top of that. Or when CalSTRS comes up with new stuff, and we love talking about that. So we look at, okay, how do you maximize certain things, that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
So it really depends on the sense of things. And I mentioned students before. I even go to our student workers, because I find them a huge valuable resource too. So if there's a technology thing that comes up that, hey, you know what, it's something's happening with Windows 11 I don't understand. Right. So I'll go to our student workers over at the tech help desk, and I've established relationships with them too. Where we've talked about Comic-Con, and we've talked about all these things that are neat and design and creative and everything. And that's basically a pathway, an open door into having conversations about other stuff in terms of the technology, or, hey, this thing's happening in Windows and I don't understand, can we help you with this kind of stuff, Or like just yesterday, our scanner at the CLC is not working. And so Kevin, our tech support over there now, was there. And then, I just basically put in a help desk request. And because he and I have a really good relationship, and he was there
right there on the spot.
Yeah, he was literally right there within the hour, right? Trying to do that. And he was working on it for a couple of hours. And, I had to leave by that time, so I don't know what the resolution is. But again, depending on the need,
right,
depending on where I think the resource can come from, and then depending on the relationships that go with those resources, I'll tap to those particular individuals for that.
I'm hearing you just constantly like, I need an answer. I'm going to ask so and so, or
Right.
I'm going to ask this group. And I just want to emphasize that because I think it can be very easy, especially for newer faculty or associate faculty or faculty who are going through the tenure process to, and I guess this actually speaks to staff as well, right?
Yes.
Who don't want to look as though they don't know. And so I see a tendency on a lot of people's parts, like, well, I'm going to try my best to figure out the answer before I say anything. And maybe they never say anything. They think they find the answer. They don't verify it. They don't they don't get out of their own head and go on a field trip, as I tell my students. Um, and I think that what you're kind of consistently pointing to is it's not about a right or a wrong. It's just getting these various perspectives. Well, what do you know about it? What do you know about it? And before you know it, you've accidentally built this network of people, but you're
Right.
never coming from the standpoint of like, I'll just figure it out myself. I mean, some things we can, but that it feels like that's a danger for so many folks of like, I'm just going to figure it out so no one judges me. And that's like literally the thing we tell students don't do, like ask, right?
Right. Right.
And then there's this huge professional conglomerate of folks who are like, no, I don't want to be judged for not knowing.
Yeah.
And I think, I don't know, I think you would agree with me that I respect when somebody says, I don't know this thing and they're trying to figure it out. Like as a colleague, I really respect that.
Yeah, and you know, and a lot of times too, it's not that you haven't done your own research. But
Yes,
sometimes you've done that research, or you've done it to a point where you still don't understand it. And I go back to that
correct.
healthcare
The
example. When I
website,
go to,
yeah,
yeah, the website didn't answer any of my questions,
right.
and it didn't give me a true in-depth understanding of how that PPO plan really works, especially
Sure.
how all the interrelated elements. I mean, a matter of fact, one of the things when I was sharing with somebody, I said, "So, tell me about the pharmacy prescription benefit."
Mm.
And I said, you know, the Costco one supposedly doesn't charge you if you get generics. And the person who's been on this particular plan for a few years didn't even realize that. So
Oh,
in terms of that, I mean, they had so much more knowledge than me. I mean, so much
right.
more, and I give them all the credit for providing me that knowledge. But there's also elements that even as an expert yourself, you may not have come across, you may not have needed, you may not have used, right?
Yes.
So the joke that I always do when I give orientations in class, especially for, you know, telling students to come to a librarian for help, is that Geico commercial where I tell them, you know, give us 15 minutes of your time and we will
Yes.
save you 3-4 hours of your time, you know?
Yes. I reverse that. And I credit my librarian friend from Cal State San Marcos, who was always like, if you have not accomplished anything in 15 minutes, that's your point where you go, okay,
Yes.
I'm reaching out for help. You've done hard work for 15 minutes, fine. You're not throwing in the towel, you're just
Yes.
phoning a friend, so to speak. And I was like, I like that. But you're right. Like there's no weakness in asking for help. Like we literally survive off of each other and information changes. Even say
Yes.
that website had been better, it's entirely possible it's outdated, right? That things have changed, and we see that all the time. I consider myself really good with Canvas and Zoom, and I was in something the other day. Oh, with Nadia Khan, it was the Canvas Open Lab Hour. And I just went to kind of see what was going on. And within 15 minutes, I learned two things. And I'm going, I am an idiot. I had no idea. And I didn't know these things. It's like, no. A lot of people don't. I'm like, this was so helpful. And that's a tool I think I know pretty well, you know? So I love everything you're saying. I'm going to skip the fourth question because I feel like you've touched on that and I don't want to keep,
Okay.
you know,
Sure.
making you say the same thing over. So kind of the last thing is from your vantage point, what connections or resources do faculty most often lack? And what single change would make the biggest difference if you can think of something?
Yeah, this again, I mean, all of your questions are really good questions. I mean, they're great in terms of what you're trying to accomplish here too. Um, I think for me, and I don't know if it's true for others, but again, going back to that introverted nature, I tend not to go out of my comfort zone, and when I do it very slowly.
Mm,
So there are things out there that I know that people are doing. I shouldn't say I know. I feel that they're doing, and sometimes because I'm not at that particular vantage point, I don't know for the depth of what they're doing.
yeah.
You know, and I'll even use you as an example. You're doing great work over there with the the rental. I don't know the formal names.
Oh, the affordable housing
The
management.
affordable housing, and then I know you're getting a community garden started over there, that kind of stuff. And I read some of these little things, but I don't work intimately with you on some of these other projects, so it's not. I don't know. Right.
Yeah.
So like when people come and say, oh, there's a community garden anywhere, I say, well, I know Erica Duran's working on something, but maybe,
Yeah.
right. I'm not sure. I don't know how far we are in the progression of that. I don't know their funding, behind whatever. I don't know where the piece of land is, that kind of stuff. Right. So I think that in terms of lacking, that sometimes we don't go out, and part of that is because we don't have sometimes the time to go out and see what goes on out there.
Yeah.
So the things that we sometimes have, like the resource fairs or like the open houses or the where career expos and stuff like that, that is areas where sometimes it's great to meet other faculty, especially when you're setting up your table and you have a partner there and you're going around visiting other departments or other services or that kind of stuff. I think that is helpful. Yeah. I know the FA tries very intentionally to have these educational get-togethers where, hey, you know what, it serves two purposes, right? One for socializing and getting to know each other, and then the other to basically learn more about our contract or learn more about what the FA does. And I think that's another connection that I'm surprised by, that not a lot of faculty members take advantage of. I mean, usually when we have that, we have about 50-ish faculty members who join. And when they do show up, I mean, I basically learn more about them, or I basically have a connection with them, especially when I'm asked to give a little, I guess, small group discussion with that, because I'm a member of FA, right? So I sometimes share certain resources with the FA, which is very funny because I don't enjoy doing that again, but but I'm tapped to do that kind of stuff.
You have to.
Yeah. But when you're in that small area, with like 6-7 people and they're from different departments, like, oh, what department you're in, and you introduce yourself and you tell them what you do, and they come back to you later on. So I think that's another area in terms of vantage points where sometimes I think we lack because we don't have the time. And sometimes it's on a Friday, sometimes you have a meeting on a Friday, or the CLC has a workshop going on a Friday, or something goes on like that, right? So I mean, it's a change that I would love for us to have more connectivity as a faculty body member, where, hey, we have more of that kind of stuff, and not something that's forced upon us. Like, all college days, great, right? Because we get to see a lot more of us, but we don't, because a lot of times it's an agenda driven.
It's structured.
Right. It's very structured. And, I can say, hey, Erica, for like 2 minutes while we're getting our food, and we come back at our tables, and we don't have more than that 2 minutes for conversation. Right. So.
That's such a great point. I wish that more of the college events did have just a space for that. Not to throw out the structure, but just whether it's an hour or it's 2 hours throughout the day where it's just mingling or whatever, because I agree. I don't think, even when you do have the intentional spaces that are put together for specific groups like FA, or you've got a resource fair, we have a million associate faculty too who are everywhere. They may not be on that campus that day, or bandwidth is a thing, right? Like lack of bandwidth is a thing. And there's so many things to choose from that we're blessed and cursed in having like this, almost cornucopia of things where we could connect with people. And at the same time, it's like, it could be exhausting. So what I'm hearing is maybe be intentional too. Like if you can pick one and like really find some place to go connect, go to an expo fair, or go to one of the FA things, like just pick something, right?
Right.
And go connect with some people. This doesn't have to be exhausting. I think that the Monday kickoff day was awesome this semester, but again, it was sort of like one of those, gosh, we want everybody to be there. And then, maybe there were like 80 folks, right? And then FA tends to have kind of that like a same amount of people. And I'm sure you and I would agree, oftentimes the same people tend to go in the same things, right?
Yes.
And so it's like, oh, it's cool, I'm seeing you again, but it's also, like if you could bring a friend, a buddy.
That's very true.
Like a lot of us see each other in the same circles. Like we desperately, and I know Curry's tried this of like, hey, we're doing the Senate retreat, like invite another faculty member. And I love that, but it's like, it is so hard to get people
Yeah.
sometimes to do these things. And I get it. I absolutely get it. And I don't know what the magic wand is to make that change, but I think what you're saying is important is, yeah, if there is a way to fill a gap. It's funny because unfortunately we talk about the gap, but the way to fix the gap is really to do that thing, right? It's like
Right.
I was talking with an associate a couple of months ago, and she was saying, like, it's really hard. You know, I don't feel like I have any community at any of the colleges I'm at. And she was teaching at 4. 3 of them are in person, one's online. And so back and forth everywhere, schedule is nuts. And she's like, I just don't have that. And I said, in some situations like yours, you may not be able to genuinely do that because the
Sure.
balance there is the work, right? And the paycheck and the paying the bills does have to come at a cost occasionally of a deeper community. But it doesn't mean there's no community. It doesn't have to mean that. And I guess that's what I want to really impart to everybody is there is a way in. Um,
Yes.
Even to your point, maybe it's one by one and knowing what 2 or 3 or 4 of your people are closest. And I don't want to lose the venting point. That was a couple minutes ago on a previous question, but it just came back to me because I want to emphasize the importance of faculty feeling like they can safely have a person they can vent to with boundaries, right? Like, I don't think
Sure.
if I came into your office every day and said, oh my God, you know what happened today? Like, there's a difference, right? Between the venting and I need to get this off my chest. I just need to be heard right now versus like a toxic colleague just is
Yes.
an endless fire hose of negativity,
Yes.
which we obviously don't want either. But you know, there's a balance there, and I hope that we can all find 1, 2, 3 people that we feel safe in doing that with. So, is there anything I didn't ask you that bubbled to the top that you feel like I should know?
Not offhand. I mean, I will say this though, in terms of the job that you're doing and in the job that all our campus leaders do in terms of what they, the various committees that each of you take on. I sometimes I know it's not appreciated. Where hey, all the work that you're doing and all the joyfulness that you're trying to spread, and the pedagogy behind a lot of these things too, right? So I'd like you to know that I appreciate it. I don't express it, but in the back of my mind, when I read your blog or when I read your newsletters and things of that caliber, it's like, okay, this is happening. So I may not be intimately engaged, but I'm aware. And when I'm aware, it helps me again connect other people to that kind of stuff. So
I appreciate that, and that's sort of one of the goals of this is I may never hear anybody who watched this video, but people will watch the video. Like I can see how many people read the newsletter and it's like, okay, somebody read it and maybe they leave and they go, okay, that resonated. And maybe the next week they go talk to somebody else as a result.
right, right.
That's the goal. So thank you for talking with me, Richard. It was good connecting with you again.
It's my pleasure.
Have a wonderful Labor Day, and I'm
Thank
sure
you.
we'll see you soon.
Okay, take care. You too. Bye bye.
Bye.